Okay, I thought for this video lecture we're going to talk about the basics of two-dimensional drawing, and this will be going through chapter 3 of your textbook, so you probably want to have that out and open. I'm going to go ahead and open up this little textbook drawing that we did before, and we'll use this as our guide. So first thing I'll do is just a file, save as, and I'm going to call this one chapter 3 and we'll call it 2D Basics. And I probably won't hit everything in here, but I'm going to hit the things that I think are important and that I think that you'll use a lot of in your drawing exercises. So we'll get through that. Some of them I'm not even that familiar with myself, so hopefully I'll be able to get through them well. So let's save this. You'll notice at the top of the screen now it says that I'm actually automatically into chapter 3 2D Basics. So we'll let me just select, whoops, I always hate that new tool. Click, let me just go through that again. If I want to select something, I'll just bring my mouse, left click, drag it through, left click, and it selects everything in the screen. And then I can delete them if I hit delete. I'm going to do a Control Z, bring them back. Control Z will undo anything that you do, or you could actually type in undo, but Control Z does it just as well. If the delete key does not work on your computer, what was it first? Pick first. That's it. I was looking for. Pick first. And mine is set to, if I set it to 0, if yours happens to be set to 0, and I do that same thing, select and hit my delete key, doesn't work because the pick first is set to 0. Now I can type in erase and then select all my objects and hit enter, they'll delete. I'll do a Control Z. Now I'm going to type in pick first, set this to 1. Now I can select all my objects and hit my delete key, and they're gone. So if yours happens to be doing that and you like to use your delete key to delete things like I do, then there's an opportunity. The objectives on page 107 is to learn to use dynamic inputs and their capabilities. Learn to draw objects such as lines, circles, rectangles, polygons, polylines, arcs, and ellipses. Change the color and line style. Work with hatching. Create a table and multi-line text. Now tables, I got to be honest, I don't really care that much about because we have a program called Excel which does tables nicely. Unless they're integrated into your drawing object. So if you change this information in your table and it updates your drawing, then it's a useful thing. But we find that most of the time we do that with other programs now. So the tables, I may bypass that just for now because I don't really see that that's something that we'll use a lot of. So we've talked about a little bit about this in the last video about setting points, and absolute always goes from 0, 0. Relative creates a 0, 0 at the point that you're at the current time. And then we look at polar coordinates, which are distance and angle, as opposed to Cartesian coordinates, which are your x, y, and possibly z coordinates, where we're plotting those out. And both your polar coordinates and your Cartesian coordinates can be either absolute or relative. So I know it gets a little confusing, but that's okay. I'm going to work in this level 0 just because we're going to be working in some practice stuff. I'm going to change my line weight to a little bit thicker so it shows up better. My line weight is on. If it's blue, it's on. If it's white, it's off. So let's just start by drawing a line. So I'm going to select my line tool. This is just our line segment. And if I want to start at 0, 0, before I even left click with my mouse, I'm just going to say 0, comma, 0. And that automatically puts me at the 0, 0 axis. You'll notice as I move my compass around, I get this dynamic input. So it's changing my angle and my length. So if I want to put in a length of 10, I'm going to hit my tab key. Now that puts me over, so I'm locked at 10. No matter what, this is going to stay at 10. You'll see the little padlock. And if I want to put this in at 30 degrees, I just type in 30, hit enter, and now we have a line that is 10 units long at a 30 degree from 0, 0 being this angle. Okay? Let's draw another line now. And I hit the escape key to finish that if you're wondering how I stopped it. Hit escape and that exits out of your command. Now let's, you'll notice I have this grip point now. So let's look at our snaps. You'll see how it grabs the end points with this little, and a midpoint shows with a triangle. If we look at our snap points, and to come down, we want to look at this tool right down here at the bottom, snap cursor to 2D reference point, it's on. F3 is actually the toggle. If your function key F3 will toggle it on and off. So that's your on-off switch for object snaps or O snaps. If we drop this down, we can see that currently we have endpoints, we have midpoints, we have center points, we have intersections, we have perpendicular, we have tangent, and the rest of these are not turned on right now. And this is probably good for what we need. So if you wanted to go to your snap settings, you can actually select the bottom tool and select them from here also. This is just where you want to put them. So we'll say OK. And let's start another line from here. We'll go in this direction. And let's put in a length of 10 again. Hit my tab key. And now we're at 10. And it's going from, you can see it starts at 0 all the way over to 150. What if I didn't, what's the opposite of 150, or what's the opposite of 30 degrees? Right here would be, let's type in, just see if this works, minus 30. Enter. So that put it down on the lower line, which is fine. Let's try it again. 10, comma, or excuse me, tab. So it would be 180, this would be 90, and another 60, we would want 120. So let's just key in, let's see if I'm close. Although it goes from there. That's 120 degrees. 90. Oh, 90 plus 60, I'm sorry. Dumb. So we'll go 10, tab, 150. There we go. So it's 90 plus 60, and 30 would give us 180. So just kind of a thing to learn. Now let's look at some Cartesian coordinates with a line. We'll start again at 0, 0. And we'll make this line 10. Now, instead of hitting the tab key, I'm going to hit the comma key. And when I hit the comma key, it puts me in XY coordinates. So you can see there's 0, there's 10 and 0. And if I pull it up, it's locked at 10. It's 5 up. So it's going 10, 5. So you can see it lengthens the line because it's just set at 10 here. But as I pull it up, I'm locking into this y-axis. So if I want to make this at, let's say, 12. So it's over 10, up 12. Hit enter, and there it is. So that doesn't necessarily make the line of the length 10. It just gives you 10 in the X mode and 12 in the Y mode. Now, starting from this endpoint, let's just start a line from here. And you can see that it goes back to the polar coordinates because that's my default. and we'll type in 10. I'm going to hit comma again. This time I'm at 10, but it's still in the absolute. So if I come up here, you'll see it goes 10 and 7 from that point. Okay, and I'll just write in 3. So it goes over 10, up 3. So I'm sorry, it wasn't absolute, that is in relative. It looked like it was going the wrong way. Let's try it again with another one. So if I just come off this point, we'll go over 5, hit comma, and we'll go up. And even though it looks like it's going off, let's key in 1. So it's over 5, up 1 from this point. So that's a relative coordinate point. Okay? Let's start looking at some other things. Let's do a polyline. Now a polyline is the same thing as line segments, but they're going to be connected. So I can go from this point to this point to this point to this point. If I hit escape and I just select that line, you'll notice everything selects. And these handles are actually handles that can be moved and stretched. If I grab it by that handle, I can move it around, and you can see I get those coordinates showing from that relative point if I wanted to move it. The other thing, you just hit escape. I can grab an endpoint, and I can, whoops, I want to grab it right by the endpoint. You can lengthen it. You can change its position. If I wanted to move it back to this point or over here, you'll see it finds that center point on any of these lines and reallocates that location. So these handles or grab points are easy to manipulate an object and physically move it precision-wise. Let's look at so we've looked at some dynamic endpoints. Remember, use your tab key if you want to stay in polar. Use your comma if you're going to move to Cartesian coordinates. By default, unless you key in 0, 0, it will go with a relative point from wherever you start. And you can use the @ symbol. There's some information in the book. But for the most part, you're going to just use these. Now, if you're having some issues, type in the command D settings, hit enter, and you can see which is the same thing we did down below. But under dynamic input, you can see your objects. If we see our information on, I want to look for pointer setter settings input. There's your snap paste spacing. Maybe it's down here, options. This is your auto snap. If you're having trouble seeing your snap marker size, you can adjust the size of those right here. I'll make mine a little bit bigger. That's not what I'm looking for. Let's type in pointer input. Oops. I thought it was under D settings, but pointer input settings. Should be right here. Oh well, again, I'll find it somewhere. Tools menu. You haven't lost me. Oh, I think I had it right anyway. There it is. Sorry about that. It was in the settings. I had it right there in front of me. So we can go here. You can see it's set to polar format, Cartesian format. Obviously goes to relative coordinates by default unless we tell it to go to the absolute coordinates. So relative and polar format are generally what you're looking for. So again, apologize for that. Let's cancel this out. Let's look at some other ways to input things. And we'll start looking at some other objects. We've kind of gone through our dynamic inputs. I'm going to move up to we can look at the points tool. If we drop down this arrow here, actually, on page 122, 3.6, we look at the point command. It says generally a node in a drawing is shown as a point. The points are drawn using the point command. Under the Home tab and the Draw panel, we're going to look at drop this down. There it is right there. I couldn't see it. So it's a point tool. Specify a point. Left click, left click. So it may be hard to see. So if I want to change my points, so that they're bigger, and that was a place. Point size. This allows you to change the size. So we're going to go over to our shows it in the measure tools under utilities, point style. This is on 3.6.1.2 on page 124 of your textbook. Check that. We can see right now it's just set for a dot. So if we wanted to change this to like a target point like this, we can say OK, and you see all your points automatically change. So you're going to go over to your utilities, point style, and change it to any of these. As soon as you say OK, it automatically changes to those points. So let's leave it on this target, which is kind of cool looking. And we'll set some points. We can set a point on this end. Any place I left click is going to place a point. So that works pretty well. Let's take a look now. So we've placed points out there. I'm going to move ahead. And I don't use points very often, but I'm sure as civil engineering students you may want to use these as something where you're going to put survey points out on a map, and you want to be able to connect these points later on. So if you're plotting points from survey locations, this is a good tool to use. So you may find a good way to use this. Move to page 132. We're going to look at item 3.8, which is placing a circle. For the most part, you're going to place a circle. If I just select this tool, you can see there's all our circles. We can select a circle by center and radius, center and diameter, 2-point, 3-point, tan radius, and tan. You're saying, oh my God, tan. Okay, so let's just start with the first one, center and radius. So we'll say I want to put a circle right here on this end point. There's my center point. You can see it gives me the shadow. So if I want to bring it out until it touches this end point or this end point, or I can go to that intersection or obvious intersection, I'll just pull it out here. And I'm just going to key in 3. Okay? Now the other option is center and diameter. So let's drop this down, go center diameter. We'll specify a center point right here. And now it's asking, specify the diameter. Well, if I want it to be, let's say 4. There's a 4 diameter. If I actually measure the distance from this point to this point, it's 2. So we put the circle in by diameter rather than by radius. So you don't even have to think about dividing the circle in half to find the radius. You can put it in by diameter. We have 2-point circles. Let's play with that one. I don't use it that often, but you can go to the 2 outside places. If I wanted to go, let's go 2-point circle from, there's a, is that tangent? Doesn't look tangent. No. I forgot what the tangent looks like. That. So we'll get into some tangent modes here anyway. So let's go tan radius and see what that does. So tan radius. Specify center point for your circle. So we'll just go here. Require a tangent object snap. So let's go there. We can see the tangent. So I'm just going to go right to the edge of that piece. Specify another tangent. We'll go right there. And then it says specify the radius of the circle. I'll just leave it there. So it automatically places my circle tangent to this circle, tangent to this line. Let's try it again. Tan radius. Specify a tangent. So we'll go tangent here, and enter. So it actually placed the same size circle. Let's try it one more time. This time we'll specify the radius and see what happens. So we're going to go, oops, sorry. Hit the wrong one. There's tangent, and let's just key in 1. So it actually made a 1, say inch radius circle tangent to this circle and this line. Now what happens if we go tan? All right, we're getting more difficult here. Tan. So let's go tangent to this, and tangent to this. And this way you don't actually put we got 3 tangents, so we want a circle that's going to be tangent to 3 different objects. So the radius you don't get to put in because it has to be a specific radius to be assigned to 3 objects. Now you may find a use for that. Let's try this one. Tangent. So it automatically found the point that was tangent and the radius of the circle to all 3 of those, which I think is kind of cool. I don't get to use it very much because I don't find the uses out there. So you'll look through. That pulls you all the way up to on the tangents. You can practice with those. They give you a couple different exercises that you can play around with that. Now, if we move up to page 142, we've got some polygons. So I'm going to, the other thing you can do with this is if you hold your left mouse button down, you can actually create an area, an odd area around certain objects, and you can select them that way. It's hard to get used to for me because it was never there before. And then I just hit my delete key, and they're gone. So let's move up to the polygon section. And the polygon is located right here. You can see we've got rectangular or polygon or a regular polygon. A rectangular object just allows us to set, and let's go ahead and type in 0, 0. And now we can key in. It automatically goes to our Cartesian coordinate system, and I'll key in 12. Now if I hit tab, it's going to look for my next height. So if 12 is wide, let's just call it 6 high and hit enter. And there's a rectangle that's, say, 12 inches wide, 6 inches tall. I had said inches. Let's go check and see what our units are. So if you click the application menu up here and go down to drawing utilities, let it fly out, and then just type units or just look at units, we can see that we're working in decimal. Our precision is 0.0. Our insertion scale is 0. So we can actually work in engineering, architectural, fractional, and scientific. But decimal works good for us. So that tells us we're working in inches because we're in an imperial file. So we'll just say OK. Now let's look at other types of polygons. We've got this type of polygon. So first thing it asks is, how many sides do you want on your polygon? Let's put 6. So it'd be a hexagon, is that right? Yeah. So now it says specify the center. So let's use the center of the top of my rectangle. Now, do we want it inscribed or circumscribed? Let's go inscribed. And then if I pull this out, you'll see it's on the point. So the radius actually goes to the point, meaning that the circle, the imaginary circle, would be on the outside. And you'll see it gives me a radius of 6. Let's do the same thing now, and let's do it as inscribed. Number of sides, let's put 7. And center point. Now, do you want inscribed or circumscribed? Let's go with circumscribed. And now we come out to this point. You'll notice it goes to the flats. So an imaginary circle would go on the outside of this one. So you can see the difference now on the flats would actually make that circle, the imaginary circle. If we go here to our center point and radius, and remember, you can always hit the enter key. Will remember your last command. So that's the difference between we used a 6 radius on both, but one of them is inscribed and one of them is circumscribed, meaning it's on the outside of the polygon. Okay? I'm going to left click, delete. Now you know how to do polygons. If you have a really odd polygon, something using a polyline, and I just hit the C key, enter, it will close the object and make it a shape out of that polyline. So it makes this area. So you can do odd shaped polygons. Now they talk about creating arcs in here. On page Actually, they use it in Polylines. I've never done this, but let me just see. Start a point. Now, it does give you the option of either length. Let's put in A for arc. See down at the bottom, polyline. Next point, let's hit A, enter. And now we're into a arc mode. So if I went to this point, it would allow me to create arcs by picking up the radius of those. That gives you kind of a cool little thing. Don't use it that much, but hey, you never know. If the one place I do use arcs quite a bit is creating door swings. So let me just pull this out of here. And I'm just going to create a couple of polygons that represent the end of a wall. So I'm going to make this to here. And oops. So let's say we've got two walls. And I want to show a door swing here. If you've seen a door, this is in plan view. So I'm not measuring anything, so I'm going to rotate this thing, enter from that point. So there's a door swing. And I want to show an arc. I'm going to change my color to something funky here. There's my arc tool. So we have start, center, and end. Let's just try it with start, center, and end. I have trouble with this one because I'm always getting it messed up. So you can see it works good, but it's swinging in the wrong direction. Hold down your control key and it will swing in the other direction. So I can let go of the control key, it will swing counterclockwise. If I hold down the control key, it swings clockwise. And there's my door swing. So I use the arc quite a bit if I'm just going through doing floor plans and I need to create a bunch of arcs. And even with this, I can take this door, copy it. I can select it, and we'll look at mirroring this door. So I'm going to enter my first point, my second point. It says, and always look down at the bottom left-hand portion of your screen. It says mirror the erase. Do I want a copy of it? And I'm going to say no. So it keeps the old one. If I select it, and I'm going to mirror this one the other way. So we'll go, this is my axis point. Actually, let's do a weird one. I'll create it. I'm going to hit tab. 135. And it says, I'm going to say mirror it. Do I want to keep a copy of it? If I say yes, it just rotates it down. So I've created these now that I can grab these and move it. So I could actually copy these and move them around to different locations on a floor plan. So a lot of times you draw something once, you don't want to have to keep drawing it over and over again. You can make a library of these objects. These are just basic two-dimensional drawing tools, so it's not really that big a deal. Now, they talk in this chapter, if we move on to the ellipse, which starts on page, actually on 151, it's 3.11, the ellipse. Ellipse has a minor axis and a major axis, and we do use this quite a bit. One thing, when we're drawing odd angles, I'm not sure why this thing must be at the maximum of my drawing area. There we go. I'm just gonna get rid of some stuff here. Okay, so now let's look at arcs, or ellipses, I'm sorry. Here's your ellipse. We have axis, end. So let's just follow our directions. Specify endpoint. So I'm just going to, let's hit C for center. You can see that's one of my options. So here's my center point. Specify endpoint of axis. So I'm going to make my endpoint of this axis at 10. Then it says specify other axis. So we'll make this one 24. And there's my ellipse. Sometimes you need to break these things up. So if I had a line going right through this, and another line going through this way, and I just wanted to keep this arc in between here. Let's see if we can do this. Let's type in TR for trim. It says select object or select all. I just like to hit select all, so just hit your enter key. Now, remember, I can trim an object by just left clicking on it, like this. You see it gives me a little clue as to what it's going to cut out of there. And I can cut this one. That one's a whole piece now. I can cut this, I can cut this, I can cut this, and I can cut this. Now, I'm going to hit escape. Let's say this was here. I want to extend this to its intersection, and then I want to trim this end off. Ooh, okay. TR, trim, enter. Enter again to select all. Now, I can hold down my, it says shift and extend. You can see how it extends that line to that intersection point. Okay, and then trim that end off. So the TR trimming tool is very valuable in that you can do a lot of things with it. So rather, if you look on page, they talk about creating elliptical arcs. Sometimes it's better to just create the ellipse, bring some lines into it, and then trim it off where you want to, rather than just going through all of the setting of points and getting things just right. Just use your trim command. If you look on page, it starts on page 154 using the points and goes on to 156, and all they're doing is just creating that one little arc between those two line segments. You know, really you can create the lines and then use the ellipse and trim it off and not have to worry about it. So the resulting arc is pretty minor. So we've talked about circular arcs, elliptical arcs, rectangles. We've put those in. Let's see what else we've got. Rotation tools. This is under our modifications. So in other words, all our drawing tools are located right here. And let's put just a box out here. Our modification tools, I showed you the mirror, the move, copy. If you just put your, not sure what the length of that box is. Let's just measure it. Point to point tells me this is 20. So if we use our fillet tool, for instance, click this. It says select your first object, select second object, and let's put in radius of 2, and then we'll select our second object. So it rounds that off. A fillet is a rounded edge. A chamfer is a square edge. So we're going to select our first polyline, second polyline, oops, didn't get that quite right. Select first line, doing something wrong. I don't use this chamfer tool very often. So distance 0, 0. Oh, trim mode. Trim. We want to trim it. First line. Let's go 2. Second line 2. There we go. Had to put the distance in. So it chamfers. You can actually use a different distance for each one. So this one I did 2 and 2. This one will do 2 and 1. So again, we'll just try it again. It's just good to practice. You can see I do it all the time. So we're going to use our trim method. Enter when it asks me. And we'll select this line. We're going to say distance is 2. Second line is going to be 1 on this line. So this one did a 2 and a 1 chamfer for the opposite edge. So a little bit of practice, you can get good. You can see I need to work on it. Now, this is still a polyline, or excuse me, a shape. So, but because it selects all as one. If I want to rotate this, let's just look up here. There's rotate. What is the command? I'm just going to hit R. There's redraw, round, regenerate. So RO is the command for rotate. Select my object. Enter. You can select multiple. Find your base point. This is your hinge point that you're going to rotate off from. And now we can just rotate that wherever we want to by a specific angle. If I want to rotate it 90 degrees, it's going to rotate it straight down. Or you can kind of fudge it with 2 points. Okay, so we've talked about some drawing tools and some manipulation tools, rotations, whether you want to rotate and copy is all available on the drawing. So the best we can do is practice with this. Let's look at our properties here for a second. We can see that this tells us what color we're working in. In this case, we've assigned some colors to different lines, or we've just gone by, if I just say by layer, it's going to go with whatever properties are in this dialog. So if I want everything in my default layer or my 0 layer to be yellow, and this is set to by layer, anything I draw now in that layer is going to be yellow as long as this says by layer. Now we have line thicknesses, but we also have line styles. Let's drop this down and see that we only have one line style. It's continuous. What if I want a different line style? We talked initially in the first videos about different types of line styles. Let's load up some line styles. Here they are. We've got some ISO line styles. We've got centers. Let's put in just a dashed line. This looks like our standard one. Hit OK. And there we have a dashed line now in our drawing. Let's load up a center line. Just a straight center line. Hit OK. So you could load them all, but you can just load the ones you want. Now if we take this out and I say, okay, I want to draw this as a dashed line. When I'm drawing a line now, it will actually show up as a dashed line. Like that. If I want to make that line bigger, is if I select properties, just right click, go to properties, we can see that the line type scale is 1. Let's change it to 4. So it actually scales that line style up for us. Now, does it always stay there? If I draw another line, will it stay at 4? No. But we can go to our layer properties, and let's say our line type is always going to be dashed. Okay. And close that out. I'm going to type in the word LTS scale, line type scale. We're going to type in 4. That scaled every line type up to 4. And because I set that as a layer, you can see all these others stayed the way they were. Or I mean changed to the new line style because we're by layer. So now if I left click and left click, it's going to give me that line style at a scale of 4 for this particular drawing. Okay. Line type scales. Now, what's this look like over on the paper? If I go to a layout, it doesn't show up very well because it's yellow. You can see these line scales came up really big. I'm going to type in the command PSLT SCALE, plot scale. I'm going to set it to 0. I'm going to type in regen. Should have changed those. I think it's scale. Let's go to 1. There we go. It just needed, let's go back to 4. There we go. So it regenerated. Now you can see it putting it at 4. When I go into my plot scale, it will remember that. So even though I'm coming back, sometimes this model looks good, but when you go to your layout, the scales, because it's scaled in there at a different angle, we can check our paper, and here's our scaling tool. If I want to bring that in there at half scale, actually we want to go in 1 to 4. There it is. Guess 1 to 1 doesn't fit. No, that's huge. Let's try 1 to 20. There we go. So you can see that in order to fit that on the paper, I had to go to a 1 to 30 scale. So if we just go, let's see if I can show this to you. PSLT plot scale. We'll set it back to 1. Go back to our model. See what happened? All the lines went to really large dashes. Even though it looks good over here, when you go to your actual sheet file to plot it out. So I'm going to type in PSLT SCALE plot scale, and I set it to 0. Back to model, back to layout. Do a regen. There it is. Now you see our line styles are better because we're scaling it down. It doesn't want to scale the line style down at the same time when you're trying to squeeze this onto a piece of paper. So sometimes you have to manipulate your line scales for both paper and the actual model, because remember, when you're modeling in full size, or when you're drafting, you're modeling in full size. So we have the ability to create custom line styles. We may get into that a little bit later on. We start doing some mapping. We'll actually bring some stuff in. Changing things on the fly. If I come back to this model and I say, I really don't like the yellow, I want to change this, I can just come here to my layer properties, click on this yellow and say, okay, I want them all to be this light blue, or actually red, so they'll show up. Everything that was in that layer that was done by layer goes back to red. Now, if I select this line, right click and go to properties, we see that the color was modified, but I want to change it now so it says by layer, so it goes to the red. If I actually select all of these, right click, say properties, see where it says varies? I want to change this and say I want everything to go by layer and close it out. Hit escape. Now we have everything is drawn in color by layer, so it makes it easy to work with. Okay, beyond this, we get into some text placement tools. Let's just briefly look at text, and I'm going to change this to, let's change our layer to something else. We'll go into definition points. Make that an active layer. You see the check mark in front of it, that means it's an active layer. We're going to work in by layer, and we want our color to be light blue. So here's text. We have multi-line text and single line text. If I select multi-line, I'm just going to, rotation by default is 0, so I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to type in CIE 101 lab and hit enter. It goes to another line. This is still single line text. If, whoops, I hit escape. See how it went really small? If I select that text, I'm going to right click on it, go to properties. We can see that the text size is set to 0.2. I want my text size to be 2. Okay? So that's 2 inches long, high. If I come back here and go to my annotation for text, I can create some custom text styles. We can see that it was defaulted to 2, and I can just hit apply and close. I want to take a look at this one right here. There we go. So I want to create a new text style, and it wants to be CIE 101A. Don't know why I called it that. I'm using a Lucinda Sans Unicode, and I always want this text size to be 4 inches tall. Using that, and I want to say apply and set current. So that's the current text style I'm going to use. So if I come here, go to single line text, put a start point, hit enter. I'm just going to type in my text and left click. Let's go to annotation so you can see I'm using this one. Let's create another new one. This will be CIE 101B. We'll say OK. This one's going to be 2. Set current. Oops. We'll just say close. So now let's, okay, that's set to current. Create some new text. I'll make this one at an angle. We're going to type in my text 2. Left click. Whoops. Something didn't work right. So there's my 2 texts. So if you look here, you can see you can select which one you want. They're all listed here now. I can see CIE 101A, 101B, and we may want to title those so it says 2 inches tall text, 4 inches tall text. If we go to our, down here to our layout, we can see that text now shows up as the same size that it would be on the paper. What happens if I do a PSLT scale, set it to 1, and go back to the model, go back here, region. See, the lines changed, but the text didn't. That actually stayed the way it is, so it's not annotative. It doesn't actually scale up and down, so by just doing it the way we did it, will work fine. It's just our line styles it didn't. So if I go back to PSLT scale, hit it back to 0, region, all, there it goes back to its regular line weights. So that's why we set up templates. So if we're doing a mechanical drawing, we're going to set up a template that's going to have our line scales for both paper and model set. If we do a civil drawing, we'll do the same thing. Some of our line styles that we look at for, if we look at our drawing file and want to load up some of these you can see we have like a gas line. We'd show this on a map. We've added it to our system. We'll say OK, go back to our model. I'm just going to take a line, change this to gas line. And if we zoom in on that, we can see that it's kind of a funky line style, but gives us that ability to lay these things out in a map area. So we'll be creating some of these later on in the semester, when we find the need and get into the textbook for that. So that's our text editor. What's the difference between single line and multi-line text? I'm just going to put some garbage here. You can see that really doesn't change. You move the text around. You can see it doesn't have the handles on it that this one does. So you can still put multi-line text on it, but it may become separate entities. So most of the time I'll use single line and text, but sometimes you may want to use the multi-line if you're cutting and pasting a lot of text into the document. So I think that's probably enough for today. That kind of goes through chapter. We've talked about text and setting up our own text styles. Multi-line text is listed in the book. I'm going to read up a little bit on that myself just to find out if there's anything special about it. They do have a text that is aligned, arc-aligned text under the Express tools. I've never used that, so let me see if it's here. Arc-aligned text. Select an arc, okay? And I'm reading the book. We did that. Click at the arc. So I click it again. Gives me the properties. Arc aligned text. I should get a. Oh, maybe it doesn't like it because it's a circle. That shouldn't matter though. Oh, it does need to be an arc. Let's just create an arc. And remember, hold down the control key. We'll make it like this. So I noticed the one in the book had a little space at the bottom. Now we'll go back to Express Tools, Arc Aligned, left click. This is my text. I want to use CIE 101A. And I want my color to be magenta. You can put it above, inside, outward. Let's just try that. Oh, it spread the spacing out on that. The letters are there, but it spread them out over the entire. So let's try it again. Arc aligned. So what's this? Drag wizard. Align to the left. My text 2. And text height. I want it to be 4. Width factors 1. Character spacing. Offset from the arc 2. There it is. So you can make your text follow along an arc. So if you had a logo, for instance, that you want to put on your screen, on your title block, you could do it in a circular fashion. So you'd have my civil engineering company with your picture in there and all kinds of good stuff. So another little tool that you can throw into your arsenal is placing the text inside or on top of an arc. We have some, I'm going to get rid of this for a second. I'm going to go to my home. I'm just going to draw some shapes, and I don't want them drawn in the gas line layer. Okay. I'm going to change my color to yellow. Move in here. And let's look at our hatching tool. So here's our different hatches. If I drop this down, you can see a number of different, let's go with this brick one for now. And I want to place, it says down at the bottom, pick internal point or select object, undo, or settings. Let's just say I want to put this brick right there. You'll notice it finds the hatch pattern, or it finds the area by just putting my mouse in here. And it's really small, so I want to change the properties of this pattern. I'm going to use the current color. And should be able to check the size of this. Let's just try this. And enter. You can see the brick patterns here. So I'm just going to select it. Right click, go to properties. Scale we'll set to 12. There we go. Just for giggles. So if we go to this hatching pattern again, we can set our, we should be able to set our, it's going to be a pattern. We can set our angle. Let's put our angle at 45. See what happens if I just put that at 12. So we'll do another. There we go. So my scale I can put right here. Now, what if I wanted to do, you can see how if I move in these areas, it'll find the hatched area. Let's change it to 90 degrees. And this time, rather than an internal point, let's select by object, S. Select an object. So by selecting the object, it doesn't look at just a filled area, it actually looks at the entire object itself. If I change this to 0 and select this one, oops, I need to say, try it again here. I have to set the input in hatch, still 12. So I'm going to say select object, and I'm going to change this to 0, and I have to hit undo. It's at 0. Pick internal point. If I hit select object, there we go. Undo that for a second. This time I want to set it at 45. And I want to select object. There we go. So now you can see we've actually overlaid these patterns one on top of the other, which isn't probably the best thing because it's not going to print very well. If we actually go look at our layout, we can see that that's going to look a little funny. So you can use this any way you want, but you have the ability to find that area, or you can find that shape with the hatching. And you can see that there are a number of different hatch patterns available. There's probably some easy ways to if it dropped us down, you can see there's earth, different metals, flexible material, there's different gradients. There's, if I wanted to make gravel my current, and I want to cover this with gravel on the inside. Let's go back to our model. Pattern is gravel. Let's make this 10 instead of 12. We'll just do a K. You can see the letter K is highlighted here, so that's hit enter. It wants me to just pick an internal point. There it is. So now we have gravel filling that area. So as a civil engineer, you use a lot of different patterns to identify different types of earth material, whether it's soils, whether it's gravel, whether it's stone, concrete. All of those things have specific hatch patterns, so when you look on your drawings, you can identify them. Another good tool. So those are your hatching tools. You can play around with those, learn how to use them effectively. The tables, as I said, I'm going to skip that on page 199. We don't need to mess with tables right now. You won't be asked anything about it. And that brings us up to chapter 4. Basics of two-dimensional editing. I'd like to assign that to you for next week, and I'll put together another haphazard video on how we edit our drawings using our handles and different points. We've kind of already looked at some of the editing commands. We'll look at them a little bit more, and in our lab this week we'll be putting together a title block. So with that, I will leave it to you. Thanks.